Hey everybody. As you can see, if you really are into Star Trek, that this is a spray hypo. Now, through the seasons, the hypo has been made so many different ways. I believe it was Rick Sternbach who actually designed this, but I'm not positive. It might have been Probert, but I'm not sure. So once again, I'll be corrected one way or another. So through the years, the spray hypo, spray healer, whatever you want to call it, has been made at Paramount Prop Shop, at Makeup Effects Lab, and of course my different incarnations of shops. And they've been made out of different materials. Some of these hypos are made out of wood. Some of them are made out of acrylic and wood, or all of acrylic, and in many cases, cast resin pieces. What we're here to talk about today, since this is the one that's in my possession, this is the master that I made during DS9. You ask, what's different about this one from DS9 versus the other ones? Well, most of the other ones, these corners are hard corners. Now, that angle, I was asked to put that in by Joe Longo during DS9. I was talking to Joe about this project. He goes, I want it to be the same size, I want it to be this, and it gave me all the specifics that he wanted. I didn't want to sit here and try and make everything out of plastic and have the shrinkage problems and all these other things. So I took it upon myself to take a chunk of solid brass. Yes, I know, that's crazy. A piece of solid brass rod. And luckily, we had a 4-jaw chuck on the lathe that day. Anybody who has a lathe, who has to change between a 3-jaw and a 4-jaw, know that that's so much fun to deal with. I chucked that piece up in the lathe, and I turned this end down. This is actually a part of this piece. So I turned it down so it was nice and flat and flush, put the details in it, and then I also did this side. Now this side is the holdout for the piece of steel or aluminum that we would use. In fact, this one is aluminum that's in here. This piece here is what you put in the mold when you're going to cast this, so that you have a hole here and you don't have to try and put this in a lathe and drill it, or put it in a drill press and hope that you're in the center of it. Not that that hasn't happened before with other plastic ones before. Now, this is also a holdout. What this does is it puts a hole in the center of that, so that when you make this part, the head, and as you can see, it doesn't have any buttons on it because, well, sometimes they wanted a different button, sometimes they wanted rods, and what have you. So this particular piece is a piece of solid acrylic block that I have taken a brass rod, which is the same size as this one, and every time we do a casting of the head here, we drop in a piece of brass rod. Now what that does is it instantaneously, once we've got this cast in resin and we pull that holdout, this can now slip down directly into that hole and be exactly where it needs to be, centered, without having to try and work all that out. Once again, just like that holdout, when you pop that out, that's where the vial goes in, slides in, so just so far in. During Next Generation and most of DS9, all the tips were hand machined, and they were similar-ish to each other, but not always. Some of them, sometimes the heads were more rounded, sometimes were more missile-like, some of them were, just nothing like what somebody else had done. It also depended on how much time we had to deal with it. I believe this was a 4-day project before some silicone, as always, falling out of these things years later. Later on, in the same vein, we ended up making, you guys know the blood sampler from DS9. We ended up making actual boxes in acrylic to represent this piece, and actually just taking acrylic rod and gluing that on, because that had to have a vacuum unit in it. On the blood sampler, this whole side came off of the hypo with a screw, I believe, just in the bottom here. And that whole side that came off was nothing but a reservoir for fake blood. If I can ever find the parts again that I had made, because we were going to make 4 or 5 of those, but I think we only ended up making one finished one for the show. But basically, the way this is more about this particular one. So if I find those parts, I'll do another video on that particular hypo. That's the master. It weighs a ton. But it's definitely not going to float when we pour silicone on it. So that's not an issue. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. And if you feel so inclined, please become a patron. Thank you.